Hey guys, my name is Magnus. I am a music producer and a mix engineer based in South London, and I thought I'd take some of this extra time we have during the lockdown to show you guys what goes on underneath the hood of some of my productions, and yeah, just do like a proper production breakdown, see what happens with the mixing and the arrangements basically. I hope you guys find this inspiring, and maybe you can use it in some of your own productions. So the first thing I'm going to be looking at is a song by Rydell called Queens and Kings. Queens and Kings is the first single of a release that I wrote together with her. It's her debut record, and I had the pleasure of writing and producing the whole thing with her. So basically how it worked was we'd get together in this studio in London, in this little studio actually, and I'd do all the instrumentation work and she'd write top lines over it, and we'd kind of go back and forth until we had a complete song. It was a really organic process. All the songs were basically written in a day and recorded in a day. We were kind of recording as we were going along. So it was really important for me to have, you know, my recording chains really good, because, you know, we've all been in situations where we've recorded demos and the vibe is there, but, you know, as an engineer, you're kind of having to struggle with some really crappy sounding microphones or whatever. So yeah. My whole thing was getting a professional chain from the get-go, treating each recording element, whether it was like something permanent or whether it was a demo kind of vibe, treating it as if it was going to be the final product. So everything was like studio ready and studio quality, and in that way we were able to like churn stuff out really quickly. And she's based in Vienna, so we kind of only had a limited time together. I think it was about a week. Let's have a listen to it. You guys can find this on Spotify as well. Her name is Rydell, and the song is called Queens and Kings. And yeah, let's play it directly off this Pro Tools session.
Driving through the third, yeah, we're cruising around. Turn the music up and the windows down. You're the company that I'm keeping now. Think I'll stay another week if time allows. You can hear love stories in the alleys. You can feel blown kisses in the air. Not taking life too seriously, although we pride ourselves on things providing flair.
Think they
Right, so there you have it, Queens and Kings. So yeah, this song did really well. I think part of the reason for that was because of the really simple, stripped down arrangement. You know, the whole vibe of the song is like super old school. It's kind of got this throwback feel to this kind of old school hip hop vibe. That's what a lot of the reviewers were saying as well. And, you know, that's what we were going for. So the whole thing basically revolved around these guitar chords that I wrote. Very simple, man. Very, very simple. Let's have a listen. You know, it was just two chords, and then basically the resolving chord is kind of what gives it this lift right before the drums come in. And the way we structured the intro was we started with these guitar chords, and then we were trying to figure out what we should do in terms of getting to the next bit and putting drums in there. And I remember I had this amazing breakbeat lying around, and it was a breakbeat that I got from Questlove's SoundCloud, actually, many years ago. I can't remember when it was, but he doesn't have it up there anymore. He put it up for people to use and to sample, and I was like, man, that would be amazing. So we plopped that in after it, and the whole song just kind of started revolving around this beat. And as soon as we put that in there, we just both looked at each other, and it was like, okay, this is it, man. So this is the beat. Yeah, so that's the beat basically. It's just a Questlove beat. I processed it a bit because it was very, I don't know, I'm not sure if it was recorded with one mic, but it was pretty gnarly sounding, so there's a bit of soothe. I mean, that basically gets rid of any of the harsh frequencies. Then I did a bit of EQing, as I can see. And, oh yeah, there's a nice big boost there at 50, just to get the kick drum popping out. A little bit more EQ, kind of gentle stuff. Again, boosting some low end and taking down the harsh highs. And then, yeah, into some tape. Anyway, so the whole thing kind of revolved around that. Oh, this is interesting, actually. I've got a drum delay on here. So this is actually a technique I picked up from Russell Elevado, who I'm a massive fan of. If you probably haven't heard his name before if you're not an engineer, but you've definitely heard his records because he is the guy who engineered, Voodoo by D'Angelo and Like Water for Chocolate by Common and Mama's Gun by Erykah Badu and all that amazing Soulquarian stuff. And he would do this amazing thing, which I think he did on some of the D'Angelo stuff, where he'd put a delay, like a drum delay, on the drums, and it just kind of like floating around in the background. And if you time it, which you can now because of, DAWs are amazing. If you time it to your DAW, you can get this amazing delay that's often going kind of left and right, and just kind of like bouncing around the drums. And for me at least, it's something I've used in a lot of records. I use it in rock records as well. And it just has this kind of ability to glue everything together. So I'm just going to try to play it here, and then I'll boost it, and then you guys can hear how it sounds. It's a very cool thing to do with something that's a loop and it's static, and you can kind of bring it in and out. And I've always thought it's a really cool way of widening drums as well, if they're too mono sounding. We started with the guitars, and then we put Rydell's vocals over it, and she started with this beautiful melody, very catchy, very pop.
Driving through the third, yeah, we're cruising around. Turn the music up and the windows down. You're the company that I'm keeping now. Think I'll stay another week if time allows. You can hear love stories in the alleys. You can feel blown kisses in the air. Not taking life too seriously, although we pride ourselves on things providing flair.
Yeah, so basically, got our lead vocals in, doing the melody, and then we've got these awesome backing vocals. And the backing vocals, it's just like 2 tracks, just tiny little ad-libs that are basically harmonizing the end of each line, which is very kind of old school R&B.
Down, down, lost. You can feel blown kisses in the air.
You know, and it's funny because as far as I remember, there's not too much processing happening on the vocals. You know, we just made sure that she sang everything very cleanly, very tight. We were able to tuck it in really well into under the lead vocals, basically. You'd have these guitar chords, you'd have the vocals going over it, and basically it would all end up opening up in this last chord on the guitars that would come in, I think at the end of every 4 bars or so. And as soon as that comes in, you got the bass coming in and you got another guitar coming in, and it just kind of, whoa, everything widens up. So you've got this second guitar that comes in over the regular guitar, and it's the same chords basically, and they're popped in during the chorus of the song, and it's kind of widened everything out. So the main guitar is kind of mono, and this kind of widens everything out, and then you have the depth being added by the extra bass. And it sounds like this. That was the guitar, and then you add the bass in there. This is like floaty, awesome bass.
Not taking life too seriously, although we pride ourselves on things providing flair.
Yeah, and then the drums come in. Every time that hits those drums, you know, that's where people really start nodding their heads, and it just kind of lifts. And another little trick here that kind of gave the lift to the drums is that there's actually a tempo change. So I don't know if you can see, but the intro to the song is 77 BPM, which is actually incredibly slow. And the drum sample was at around 86, I think. I don't recall stretching it, but it's really cool. I never do tempo changes in songs, but after we did this, I was like, okay, this is really cool. This is kind of like adding another level of excitement as soon as the drums come in. So there's a tempo change there. And yeah, the bass comes in, that just opens up the arrangement massively. Yeah, and those chorus guitars. There's these really cool vocal chops, which I kind of, when I was writing it, I thought of using them as a bit of a like, kind of like a hook, you know? I'm not sure if it kind of ended up like that, but basically what I did is I took her lead vocals and I chopped them up in my machine, which is my drum machine, and I put some, you know, some distortion and some drives on them, and then I kind of played them in like an MPC, and that kind of, you know, went back to that old school hip hop sound. So let's see if we can hear these. Yeah, so basically just kind of like chopped up like a proper old hip hop producer would do. I use a lot of my production time in Machine actually because I come from that world and I do a lot of my beats on there, and that includes things like chopping up vocals like that. So it basically ended up sounding like this, and those vocals, they're kind of distorted and it's sometimes a bit hard to hear what she's saying, but she's actually saying most livable. And it's a reference to the fact that this song is actually a song about the city she grew up in. And it's Vienna, and it's been frequently labeled the most livable city in the world. So that was something that we kind of stuck in there. We tried to keep the lyrics as vague as possible so other people could relate to it as well, you know? So basically there are a bunch of things happening in that chorus that kind of lift it. When you've got something that's so repetitive, like a drum loop that's going over and over again, and you've got chords that are going, well, basically the same chords throughout the whole song, you need to find different ways of differentiating the sections of the songs, areas that need to be lifted or need to be toned down. Now, because this is a chorus, it definitely needed to be lifted. So it gets lifted through those vocal chops. It gets lifted through the backing vocals. And these melodies. These melodies are basically just 4 tracks of the same thing being sung, and this was my idea, and I basically wanted it to sound like just a choir, you know, like a little group of people singing in a, like on a street corner or something, you know, like outside. And later on the song, actually in the outro, that kind of all comes together because you can hear claps and it kind of sounds like people are together in the same space. So if we just solo the vocals and the drums, you can hear how I've got another set of claps that come in underneath the backing vocals. See, there you go. Yeah, man, super inspired by people like Kanye West and all that gospel music where you've got people clapping together. So I found that clap sample and put it in there, and yeah, it just kind of elevates everything. Then we get into the verse. Once again, the backing vocals come in halfway through the verse and they start ad-libbing every second phrase. And then in the second verse, which follows directly after, we've got these beautiful backing vocals. They almost sound like a synthesizer. I mean, Rydell's pitch is so perfect that when she sings this, it kind of, if you're not paying attention, it almost feels like there's a synth in there. And I like that, but I also tried to make sure in the mix that you could hear was vocals, you know? Yeah, it's just beautiful, you know? It's such a vibe, it's hard to bear. And then crispy, your shape never less but divine. Lights reflect your exterior. So it's kind of a running theme in this song that when new elements come in, it's not just one set of elements. Like before, it was the claps and the backing vocals. Here, it's those long backing vocals, and it's a Rhodes, and this Rhodes is actually tucked in there pretty neatly, but it does elevate that section. Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to keep the momentum going of this tune, because it's like one of those driving tunes, right? You stick it on and it's just one way, you know, it's like you put it on the car and it's just one speed, just straight down the road. There aren't any really crazy fancy stops or anything. So adding that Rhodes definitely elevated everything. And as we get onto the second chorus, my favorite parts start happening, and this is where the brass stuff comes in. So we thought brass would be an amazing choice for this tune, and I actually started by writing it with these brass samples I had, and then Rydell went back to Vienna and she recorded some real brass, and we layered that on top of each other. So basically, well, actually, let's just play it all together.
The clouds low, golden light, damn, you look so fine. What's the focus for tomorrow? Sunny with a high chance of more wine.
Yeah, it's just a nice swell, you know. I think I had the contact instruments, studio horns on there, and then they sounded great. But as soon as we layered up another set of real horns, it just kind of took it up to another level. Yeah, just beautiful. And there's like a bit of a stop, just kind of cuts, and then the second chorus starts. And that kind of cut is a very DJ thing to do, you know, just like stopping it right before the drop. So that's where that inspiration comes from. And in the second chorus, you'll realize that it is just drums and guitar. And then the bass comes in. Yeah, and then the bass comes in and the claps come in. And once again, instead of adding something to a section, taking something out, basically stripping it down is a really cool way of adding interest and keeping people, you know, kind of on their toes a bit. And then the bridge is really cool because you have this additional synth over the bridge part. And yeah, I'll just show you how that sounds. It's just kind of like very melancholic Blade Runner kind of vibe, which is super cool. And I kind of tucked it in there so you kind of barely notice it. When we were writing this tune, we were kind of thinking of, you know, late nights, you know, late summer nights where it might be 9 in the evening and, you know, the sun is just kind of there and everything's kind of in a golden hour. And you're with your friends and... yeah, it just has a bit of an underlying tone of melancholy underneath the kind of uplifting part of the song. And I think it's really cool. So if we just solo that, I remember it was just me doing a bit of like arpeggiation and yeah, this is what it sounded like. Yeah, very cool. So yeah, let's have a listen to the bridge as a whole.
So many think they own ya. I really think I know ya. Together we are free. Forever you and me, baby. We live like queens, yeah. We eat like kings, yeah. Laughing like kids, yeah. survive is hard to bear.
Yeah, so the cool thing about now that I'm listening to that vocal tone, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of distortion coming through there. And it's kind of one of those things that keeps her vocals sitting on top of the mix, is the distortion. I'm a big fan of committing as you're tracking. I do a lot of sessions in town, or I get a lot of mixes as well, where no one's kind of really committed anything, and it's up to the mix engineer to figure out, you know, how the song is supposed to sound like from scratch. And you end up having to do tons and tons and tons of, well, maybe not tons, hopefully, if the mix is good, but you end up having to do a lot of revisions and going back and forth with people, because, you know, it's never quite there. And I think if engineers were a little bit bolder and they, you know, had a bit more time in the studio, because one of the reasons this happens, that people don't commit, is that we don't have as much time. You know, we might book out a studio for a day, spend a lot of that day getting set up, and you don't really have time like farting around with different compressors. So you just kind of set the safest setting that sounds cool, you know, maybe knocking back a little bit on an 1176 for the vocals, but there isn't a lot of like EQing and stuff going on. That's usually due to budget constraints, but all those things that happen early on in the production process, they basically pile up, and they end up in the mix engineer's lap, you know, which I think is a bit of a shame. Luckily, because I have a home studio, and maybe many of you guys do as well, I don't really have those same time constraints. So for her vocals, I actually I ran everything through an 1176, and you know, I tried a lot of different settings on the first day, and then I started messing with different ratios, because, you know, on the 1176 you can hold down 2 different ratio buttons, or all of them, you know, for the classic all-in like super smashed distortion sound. But you can actually also hold in 2 buttons at a time, and those buttons can be, you know, 4 and 12, it could be 12 and 8, 4 and 8, whatever. And I realized that the combination of the ratio 12 and 8 on my 1176 sounded awesome. So what I do is I put on an attack at about like 10 o'clock, still pretty fast, you know, kind of medium to slow, but everything on an 1176 is pretty fast. And then a release that is not the fastest release, because you'll notice part of the reason why things sound exciting and distorted on an 1176 is because of the distortion that comes from the incredibly fast release time. And if you do double ratios or 2 buttons together, that distortion is increased. And a way of keeping things exciting without having too much distortion is just dialing back that release from a little less fast to something slightly slower, still really fast, but it kind of smooths things out a bit. And I basically use those settings, the combination of 8 and 12 ratio, a medium to slow attack to a fast to medium release, and just slamming her vocals, man, throughout the whole project. I mean, some of the other songs, there were points where I looked at the needle and it was pinning like 20 decibels. And that sounds insane, right? But, well, it would sound insane if you're used to reading stuff online, because apparently you aren't allowed to compress more than 2 or 3 decibels, which is absolute BS. I think you should do what you think sounds good, you know? At every step of the project. So that's what I was doing. I was basically, long story short, I was running everything through an 1176, slamming it pretty hard, and that's how the vocals ended up sounding the way they do. And I mean, on this song, you know, there's a bit of this kind of like LA3A smooth optical compression going on. And then in terms of more compression, I think there might have been, some multiband compression and a bit of parallel and so forth. But yeah, that's how we got the vocal sound. Obviously, anything you stick in front of Rydell, I mean, she's going to sound great on most mics, I assume. So, okay, let's get to the final chorus. Yeah, so I mean, that final chorus, it comes in a bit unexpectedly, which is cool. There's just a bit of a hang, and then it comes in, and everything just opens up there. You know, that's like the payoff. So you've got the backing vocals, which are just enormous there, just layers upon layers. Yeah, man. And then, you know, the outro is just a continuation of that. And I asked her to add a couple of ad-libs here and there. So it kind of sounded like there were a group of people, you know, singing this live, people getting really into it, you know. Yeah, loads of ad-libs there at the end. Little woos and ahs and... Yeah, man, that's awesome. And then, you know, she really wanted a trumpet solo there at the end. So, yeah, she just got one of the brass guys to do it. And actually, I can see that I sort of spliced together a trombone and a trumpet solo. We just went through a bunch of different takes and just kind of ended up with that. Let's listen to that. Yeah, and there's just tons of automation going on, you know, you could hear the synth getting louder there. And yeah, that's kind of it, man. A way to keep the energy going through these tracks as well. A lot of it is in the mixing. So it's funny opening up these older mix jobs because I change a lot of my settings as I go. And it's really interesting to me because I haven't actually done this for a while. But I can see what I did here, and I'm definitely going to start doing it again now, is I've got this thing called Master Ride, and this Master Rider is basically a VCA, and basically what you can do is you can create a group and allocate a VCA to that group. So it's the Master Ride here for me, and in that group, I've got the vocal bus, the backing vocal bus, the drum bus, the bass bus, the instrument bus, basically everything that's in the arrangement except for the effects. And what that does is that allows me to do these volume rides of all the groups before they hit the master bus. So you can see in the intro, the volume is like, you know, quite a lot less than it is when everything comes in. It's like almost 2 decibels less. And you have these hits as well, you know, right here for the second chorus, you can see that there's a bit of a peak here. So everything just kind of hits in just like a real band would. One of the reasons I do that is because after you've compressed everything gets very linear. So one of the ironies of mixing is that you're trying to make everything sound even. Well, not everything, but a lot of things end up sounding very even and controlled. And then you have to artificially bring back some of that excitement and those dynamics. So yeah, that's kind of it. And that just kind of goes throughout the song. Oh yeah, I can also tell before we finish this, the synth bass is also side chained. And that's basically because the bass is pretty stagnant, basically, you know, it's just a long drawn out thing. Which is really cool. Super big, super heavy, super low down. But because of that, the kick drum doesn't come through. So there's a little bit of sidechain compression going on in there. And Yeah, I think that's it, guys. There's a little bit of glockenspiel in there, little bits and bobs here and there. But yeah, that's how we created Queens and Kings, you know? Real simple arrangement. And yeah, just using a couple of smart mixing ideas and arrangement ideas in a very old school way, you know, making sure things aren't crowded in the wrong places, making sure things have space to breathe, and lifting different sections here and there. You can take a very simple idea and you can turn it into something much bigger. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I'll start posting some more videos and doing some more production breakdowns of my other stuff. All right, take it easy.